Hello everyone, this is Poonam Singh and today we are going to study Indian Economy, chapter number 1, Indian Economy on the Eve of Independence. Under this chapter today we will discuss about the new topic, that is low level of economic development under the colonial rule. So let's get started. So the topic, the low level of economic development under the colonial rule, actually it asks us the question that what was the condition of economy at that time when there was the British rule, and why the growth, the development level was very low under the colonial rule. So this we will find out today under this video. So let's move on. Here it says that the colonial kings, who colonial kings, they robbed what? India of education, opportunities, etc. So those colonial rulers, actually they have totally captured, they have grabbed, they have actually targeted the Indian education system and also the opportunities at that time, which ultimately have reduced Indians to mere just servants. And that's the reason maximum population at that time was under British rule and they were working as servants. Now the next point, here it says, during the decades of British colonial rule, who's the British colonial rule in India, there were no efforts made to calculate India's per capita income. Now the question arises, what is this per capita income? Actually, it is a kind of average income which measures the per person income earned in a given period of time, say for 1 year, and in a particular area, just like national income. When we calculate the national income of the entire country, so here we calculate not the single person income, we calculate everyone's income as a whole. So in this case, what happens? We try to calculate the income of entire population. So definitely for calculating per capita income, what will be the formula? For calculating it, just you have to do one thing. Take your total income, okay? Total income that will be divided by the total population, and then you will get to know what is per capita income, per person income in that particular country, city, state, region, whatever you wanted to calculate. Now let's move on to the third point. What does it says? The third point says that similarly the British rulers never found it necessary to calculate our national income or our GDP or domestic product or gross domestic product. So definitely the British government or the British rulers, they never found it necessary so as to calculate the national income of the country, because it was all captured by them and they were using all the, as we have studied in the previous video also about what was their motive behind the British rule or the colonial rule. They actually wanted to capture country India and they wanted to use all the resources which is available actually in abundance in the country, and were using the Indians as targeted servants, right? Now let's move on to the next slide and see some more points regarding this particular topic. So let's move on to the next. Upon gaining independence, some Indian individuals, some Indian individuals. So what happened is, when India slowly started getting the independence, at that time there were several Indian individuals who took the step so as to measure India's income. What they started to do, they took the steps so as to calculate India's income, but the attempts tragically failed due to inconsistency, lack of expertise, and inaccuracy. As we have already seen that education was also captured by them, so that is the reason at that time the data which was calculated by them was inconsistent. There were lack of expertise and inaccuracy. So let's see who all were they, who or the Indian individuals who took the pleasure so as to calculate national income or India's income. So we call them as notable estimators. So one we have is Finley, Shiras, Dadabhai Naroji, William Digby, VKRV Rao. Well, this VKRV Rao is all about Vijendra Kasturi, Ranga, Varda Raj Rao, and R.C. Desai tried to estimate such figures. So these were the Indians who actually tried so as to calculate India's national income. Now let's move on to the next slide. Now, as we have seen in the previous video that there were so many individuals who tried, Indian individuals who tried to calculate India's income, but still it was all failed because of lack of you can say it as accuracy, inconsistent data, and these all other problems at that time. But still, although the results were inconsistent, the estimates of VKRV Rao are considered accurate. Although the results were very inconsistent, but still the estimation which was taken among all of them, VKRV Rao's estimation was all accurate. Then we finally got to know that India's growth of what? India's growth of aggregate. Aggregate means as a whole. The real output. Output is what is going out from the country as raw material, or you can say it as the resources, was less than 2%. What it was? It was less than 2% in first half of the 20th century, coupled with a half percentage growth in per capita output per year. So you can consider this as a very less growth rate at that time, and that is the reason this topic named as low level. So this is very low level of output which was generated also and was transferred also, or you can say it as was generating a lot of the amount of goods, but still the transportation of the good was less. So that was continued for 20th century actually. So let's move on to the next slide. What does it says? Okay, so we are at the end of this video and we have some important questions of the day. So the questions of the day are, first is why colonial kings robbed India. So you have to tell what was the reason behind or what was that particular focus that colonial kings tried to rob India. Second question is what British rulers never found necessary to calculate. What they were never interested in calculating, that you have to tell. Then why the efforts of Indian individuals failed. So why all the efforts of Indian individuals failed, although they tried their best so as to calculate the national income or India's income. Name fourth question is name some individuals who tried to estimate colonial India's per capita income. So you have to tell about some you can say it as individual names who tried to estimate colonial India's per capita income. So colonial India means under the control of the colonial rule, still they tried so as to calculate the India's income. So that you have to tell. Then you have just give the names. Question number 5 says whose estimates are considered accurate. Write the complete name. So you have to identify the complete name and write down the complete name of that person whose estimates were accurate. Last question is what was the India's growth of aggregate real output. So at the end of that we this last question asks you that what was the growth rate at that time of the real output of the country. So I hope these questions are clear to you, and thank you so much for watching.